One on a slot to the left side. First down. They try Reynolds, and Reynolds inside the 25. Taken down by Sanford.
A little bit of excitement and momentum going over here on the Ansonia side. Reynolds comes off the right tackle. Good block. Some Stanford the last shot to make the tackle. Reynolds picks it up.
And of course, that was courtesy of Ed Clemens and Buddy Chernovitz. That, of course, was the 1994 game between Ansonia and Naugatuck, which was a classic, which Ansonia won in overtime, 28-21. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the key players for that Ansonia football team joins us today. He was an Ansonia football player from 1991 to 1994. He was a 2-year starter at fullback and also saw a lot of playing time as a sophomore at fullback. It is my pleasure to introduce to you number 39, number 6, Pete Reynolds. And Pete, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real pleasure.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? I want to thank you. Pleasant surprise. I just was like blown away that, you thought of me. It's been a little bit of time, and it's an honor, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well,
Pete, talking Valley football, that's for sure.
Well, Pete, I mean, we're going to get to that 94 Ansonia team, but I mean, you were definitely a key figure of that team. So, I've been trying a couple of years to get you. But Pete, let me ask you, how did the love for football begin for you? How old would you say you were?
I was 11 and just turning 12. My first year was with the Pee Wees, and I just happened to fall into this amazing team. I mean, this team was it was stacked. But just to let you know how I just got, right into there was I got to thank Coach Brian Browning, because he was a bitty basketball coach, and he saw that I was playing a little bit rough, and he talked to Ron that maybe we should, try football out. But yeah, that year and my first year, that was 1988.
And Pete, right. And Pete, I probably sound like a broken record when I ask this question or when I make this statement a lot to people, but I don't think many realize the importance of Pop Warner football, because that's really where the tradition started for Ansonia football. It starts at Pop Warner because by the time these kids come to high school, they are prepared to play high school football. And you can't teach a kid who's coming out his freshman year the basics of football. So the job that those fathers did coaching Ansonia Pop Warner, I mean, I think there was the Phipps. So, I mean, talk about the importance of Pop Warner football, especially for you.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, that's the staple right there. We had Coach Kevin Raleigh, who he was our coach for the Pee Wees, and you could see him in the picture in our 94 team. It is like it was consistency. We had Coach Raleigh, we had Coach Maynard, Steve Sokol, Terry Goldston, Tyrone Maynard, and those guys were the basis for the Pee Wees, and they just gave us that. They just taught us so much, and we were able to stick together. And then we move on to the Fibs, the junior midgets. Then we move on to the midgets, and they kept it simple for us. They knew where to play us. There wasn't any egos, and I think that's what gets it going. Is having that great coaching, not getting too complicated.
Right.
Just ran the wishbone. They knew where to put people, and hey, we're gonna win. We're just gonna hit harder than they do.
Right. And Pete, correct me if I'm wrong. Your second year of football, the 1989 season, I think you moved up to junior midgets. And weren't you a part of that team that won the state championship? I think you played Derby in the playoffs and you beat them. I mean, were you on that 89 team, or had you moved up by then?
That junior midget team, yeah, we went undefeated. But something happened with our paperwork.
Yeah.
So we weren't able to, travel. But the first year we went to the national championship.
Right.
And we went down to Georgia, played the Winston-Salem Greyhounds. But to get there, we had to beat a Methuen team who hasn't lost, who at the time didn't lose in 3 years. So that was a huge win for us.
And just talk about that. Yeah, and talk about that experience. Talk about that experience going to Georgia and stuff. That had to be, like, for a young 11-year-old kid, a real cool thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, going to Georgia was like icing on the cake, but going up to Massachusetts and beating a team like Methuen,
Yeah.
that was insane. It was a very close game. I remember being in the parking lot and we found out that we were heading to Georgia. Um, it was awesome. We knew we were going to have our hands full because I'm not sure how Winston-Salem breaks up their teams, but they're a pretty large county.
Right.
Here at Ansonia, I mean, I'm sure there were over 100,000 people there, and that team was sick. And we only lost 22-0, which we had some drives, we just couldn't really punch it in.
Right.
We ended up like just following some of their players, and their running back was like second team. Oh God, he went to Wake Forest. He was a free safety. They just had a bunch of talent that ended up going on playing some big time football. But we were just so proud to get to that point. It's pretty awesome.
Right. And now let me ask you, Pete, did you play fullback right away? I mean, did you play different positions? You were also a good linebacker too. I know at Ansonia, they kind of had you play one way to keep, everybody healthy and stuff, but you played a lot of linebacker too, didn't you, as a young kid?
I played the line, my first year. Like I said, that team was just so talented. There was 11 kids on that team that would really lay it on you. Just a lot of hard hitters on that team, a lot of fast kids. And I was just happy to get a starting position. It was my first year.
Right.
I was on the heavier side, and I just went right tackle and defensive tackle. Because you have the weight limit, which unfortunately hurt a lot of. We couldn't have as many as we could have.
Right.
They were able to join us later in high school, but yeah, it started out on the line.
Right.
And then
So,
I just progressed from line to tight end to fullback.
yeah. And let me ask you, I mean, playing on the line in the beginning, I mean, like you said, you were happy to have a starting position, but was it difficult to try to learn to be a running back? Or, I mean, you talked about the great coach, and I'm sure those coaches really helped you along the way, but was it difficult at first?
No, they worked well. They worked well with us. They, they could be high school. A lot of them are high school, helped out with the high school, but their level of coaching was so good, and they simplified it so well. We didn't have to worry about like running wing tees or anything like that. It was just direct. We just ran the powers. Throwing a little pass here and there,
Right.
and it wasn't hard. To get down. I mean, maybe 8 plays. And
Right.
we just kept grinding and running those plays.
Right. And now let me ask you, Pete. Obviously, you and Ron Tate were a big threat in that Ansonia backfield. Were you fortunate to play on some of the teams with Ron and Pop Warner, or was that more so high school?
Oh, I was very fortunate. Yeah, she was on that '88 team that we went to Georgia with.
Right.
And one of he's always been the guy to get the ball for good reason.
Right.
Played with him all 3 years in Pop Warner. Then freshman year, and we just stayed together. That's my guy right there.
Right. And a tremendous runner. And Pete, correct me if I'm wrong about this as well. Your 8th grade team, the midget team, I believe you guys almost made it to nationals as well, correct?
We were so close. We played a very, very tough Danbury team. They had a running back, Maurice Rosado. Man, he was a truck, and it was a back and forth game. He was so good that we would kick the ball off and we would squib it, and they would just like run back and pitch it to him.
Right.
It didn't matter how short it was; they would get him the ball.
Yeah.
But we put some hits on him, and I think we might have lost by a touchdown. If that, it was close. Right. It was close. Yeah. But I want to say they won it all, though.
Yeah, I think they did. I believe they did. Yeah. And Pete, let me ask you this: did you had mentioned how you were playing biddy basketball, and your coach saw that you were kind of aggressive. At this point, going into high school, did football become the number one sport for you? I mean, did you still play the other sports, or was football strictly your baby?
Yeah, football was always number one. I love baseball, and I was a captain of the '94 team or '95. Yeah, '95.
Right.
Yeah, '95. We had a great baseball team. We went to the semifinals, and I had a lot of fun and really enjoyed it. But football is it's like in your blood, you know.
Right.
Especially my mom. My mom's from grew up in Derby, so all
Oh,
her
okay.
family's from Derby, and even before 11, just like family parties and stuff, I would see my cousins played for Derby High School. I would see their jerseys, and they tried to corrupt me, but I didn't. I didn't. It almost worked. There's a few times I was like, "Wow, yeah, that's cool," but once I got older, my friends were all Ansonia.
Right. So Pete, let's talk about freshman year, 1991, and that was a great freshman team. I think you guys went 10-1. The only loss was to West Haven. Talk about freshman year, because you at this point you had Coach John Sponheimer, and I believe Steve. The last name's escaping me, but it'll come to me.
Steve Pepler.
Yeah, Pepler. Yes,
Yep,
thank you.
yep.
Right, and I mean a good coaching staff. But talk about that 91 team, because I mean I could see right away, being on the other side of Derby, that this team was going to be special. And I remember, I believe Buda Douglas was your quarterback. It was yourself and Ronnie in the backfield. But just talk about that 91 team a little bit freshman year, because I mean you guys basically rolled over everyone.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we got to high school, we had a ton of confidence. The play calling was the same, and we worked real hard. We enjoyed going up to the field and running the hills and working out. So we were just ready. We were ready for our turn, just to try and catch the coach's eyes. So that we can get on the field a little bit sooner. Maybe sophomore year.
Yeah.
We just showed up ready to play, man. We were, like I said, a lot of us had 3 years in, if not more, in the Pop Warner, and we were well prepared.
Right. And I think another key thing for you guys as well is part of freshman year, Vinny Lindsley had left to go to Emmett O'Brien, and you lost him, but he returned sophomore year. And I always say to myself, what would have happened with that team if he would have left? Because he may have been one of the strongest high school linemen I ever saw ever.
Oh, he was so strong. Yeah, we were going to get Vinny back. He's always been, one of my best friends, and he wasn't going to stay at Emmett for long.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, you want to go 1 year, but we always would joke with him, and I think his heart was in it too, But yeah, I mean, as far as strength, man, he was strong. Holy cow.
Right.
He could bench, he's benched like 400 pounds in freaking high school. Like, it's unreal.
Yeah, he definitely was. And I'm sorry, Pete, let me ask you this. Your freshman year, there was a big game against Derby at Ryan Field, and it felt like a varsity game. A lot of fans there, which had to be fun to play in. But I didn't even ask you that, and I meant to talk to me about the first time you got to experience playing Derby in a football game, because you hear about that rivalry, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Talk about what that feeling was like for you.
Well, Derby, they had a lot of good players, so we knew that it's Ansonia Derby. I mean, we've been watching, like as kids, coming out to the games, and I have the family members from Derby, so you're just ready for your chance to make your mark, and
Right.
It's game time. It's Derby. For us, there's nothing bigger than playing Derby. Even compared to Naugatuck, it's Ansonia Derby. You're right there.
Yeah.
So, it's an amazing thing, especially when you get a lot of fans out, and it's what it's all about right there.
Right. And what I remember too about that game freshman year is my cousin had played for Ansonia, and his father used to joke when we were kids how he walked by his bedroom 5 o'clock in the morning and he saw him just staring at the ceiling. So his mind was on that game, playing a freshman game. I mean, what was that like for you? I mean, do you get nervous before a Derby game? I mean, I'm sure you get nervous every game because it's natural, but I mean, is it the type of game where you had trouble sleeping at times?
No, I never had trouble sleeping or nerves are. I always looked at nerves are a good thing. You need it to kind of trigger that,
Right.
get that that anger and all that stuff going. So we just put our music on, before we went, early before we went in the locker room, and just get hyped up, man. Just get hyped up, you know.
Yeah.
And like you said, like that 88 Pee Wee team, we had 35 kids on that team.
Right.
You know, there's probably like 6, 7 kids, maybe more, that we added in high school. So we just had all the confidence in the world, you know. There's times we'd boost each other up, if somebody looked a little nervous, looked a little off. I remember, a few conversations like, hey, don't worry about it. We got this. Let's just do our thing. And it would usually work, on a player or two that looked a little, nervous. I mean, man, I just think about the players that we added that couldn't make weight. Phil Mrazek, Joe Jakowski, Dave Sisto didn't play.
Yeah.
Trying to think some of the guys. We didn't have Steve on those Pop Warner, Coughlin on the Pop Warner teams.
Right.
I mean, those are some, Martha Demby wasn't on our. We just had a lot of players, players.
And Pete, you talk about a lot of players because you're good. You're good at letting me segue into what I'm going to ask, so I love it. But Ansonia's always had talent. We know that. But I always say, and maybe I'm biased because I was around that era in high school, but from 91 to like 96, the talent that came out of Ansonia was tremendous. Stephen Coughlin, Luke Richmond, David Sisto, Arthur Demby, Phil Mrazek, Jeff Gregorio, Jason Lightham, Jim Frolich. Yeah, yourself.
Did we say Luke Richmond?
Yeah, Vinny, Joe Jakowski, like you said. And I mean, count Justin DeMoro, Tommy Pepe. I mean, so many great players. Ron Tate. I mean, Jason Tinney, Greg Soldier. I mean, Mark Gessner. I could keep going. It's crazy.
Yep,
the
Jeff
amount
Press.
of talent. Yeah, Jeff Press. Yeah.
Press. Yeah. Probably the hardest hit I've ever taken.
Yeah. So just talk to me about the talent that you played around. I mean, it had to be just unbelievable to play with such great players like that. Yeah,
I mean, we at the time, our coaches, they were just so good at working us and making sure we're humble and not letting it get to our heads. Just working hard. There would never be like an ego issue. There was never like, oh, he's getting the ball or no, because we had all the confidence in the world in our coaches because we knew their history. They've been there before. They played.
Right.
They taught. They coached championship teams, and where they want us to go, we went. When we get the ball, we get the ball, and they didn't work us too hard. Like they didn't. They just knew when.
Right.
It's thinking back on it, it's pretty awesome, and it's very. I think it's hard to find that.
Right.
That type of coaching.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about baseball for a sec, Pete, because you touched on it. I mean, that was a great talent of baseball players that you played with as well. I mean, Jason Andraco, I mean, tremendous pitcher. So talk about just your baseball team a little bit and Coach Vaca.
Oh, Coach Vaca. Yeah, he was an awesome coach. He knew the game like no other. We had some long practices, but we were ready. And we won the states in football. We won the state championship in basketball. We really wanted to try and do it in baseball.
Yeah.
It's tough in baseball. You got to win a lot of games in the playoffs.
And
yeah. And we ran. We beat a very good Avon team, which was. Oh, excuse me, my umbrella's turning. Yeah, very, very good Avon team.
Yeah.
To get us into the semifinals with Berlin. It just didn't work out that day. It was a 3-1 game. On another day, probably, but Jeff Gregorio was an awesome catcher. Steve Coughlin was a great baseball player. Trying to think who else. Jim Frolich was very good. We had some. I got to think a little. It's been a little bit, so I got to.
Pat Lynch.
I got to get the memory going again.
Yeah.
Some the whole baseball crew, but we had a very, very good team. Jason Lightham, he pitched awesome that year.
Yeah, and his brother Steve was a tremendous pitcher too. I mean, Steve could do it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pete, let's ask you about sophomore year of football because, like I said, you got some time at fullback at times. And correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you the kicker that year as well, like kicking off, or maybe I'm
Yeah, I
mistaken?
took,
Yeah,
I want to say, where's Shelton? I believe I made field goal.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe a couple of them that year. But yeah, I just towed it. I mean, anything to get on the field.
yeah. Did you
Um,
enjoy kicking? Or
I did. I did. Bothered my knee a little bit just by the way I kicked, but at the time I didn't care. I just wanted to be out there. You know,
right,
I did feel pressure though in that Shelton game. It was at Shelton, and like you said, I just used my toe. um, wasn't much in the soccer. Later on, played a little bit earlier, but I didn't know how to do the shoelace kick.
right,
But it worked out. Yeah, sophomore year that was a big year. Because you got to show the coaches what you got. I mean, that's when
right,
you want to be on the field. And I remember the first day of hitting, um, we would do Nutcracker, and
right.
Jeff Press went to linebacker, and there was a delay for somebody to go get the ball, understandably. So I'm like, hey, this is a chance where I could show them one that I'm not worried and I'm just ready to get out there. Man alive, that was a big hit. Yeah, yeah. We both ended up getting injured on it. Nothing that was prolonged. We just back to the locker room. Man, he put his shoulder right into my helmet, and woof.
Yeah.
Um, he was a heck of a hitter.
He was one of
He was a great player.
again, very underrated, but I think also for you, very beneficial because you got to learn under him your sophomore year. I mean, he obviously was a good captain and a good leader. So, I mean, that had to be very rewarding for you to learn from him.
Oh, it was. It was. And I was able to give him a few breathers, which was pretty cool. Throughout the year
Yeah.
season, and yeah, I mean, just by watching him, just watching him how he fires out and the angles he takes to do his thing, and he had a lot of stamina to play both ways,
Yeah.
because he was a very, very good linebacker and fullback.
And if you think about that 92 team, Pete, I know they went 11-1. They lost to New London in the state final. And people from Ansonia, sometimes I think they only think championships. But that was a pretty good year for that team because a lot of injuries that year. Jason Tinney had a tough time staying on the field at times. He was getting concussions. And yet you
Yeah.
guys found ways to win. I mean, the Holy Cross game to me was very defining for you guys because you pulled that out. I think they fumbled at the 5-yard line, and that was a big win. And you guys, the rest of the way, found ways to win. Maybe you didn't always blow team outs, but you guys found ways to win.
Yeah, we did, and unfortunately, I ended up breaking my leg versus Wolcott
Yeah.
late in the season. There's only like a couple of minutes left in the fourth quarter, and but that was tough for me. But I was able to be on the sidelines for the Holy Cross game, and for New London too. And yeah, the Holy Cross had a great team that year, and
Yeah.
New London had a great team.
Yeah.
Can't take. We
And you
were
got,
there, we were grinding. It's just didn't work out.
yeah. And you guys almost pulled it out. You were down 21-7. I'll never forget a great play. Parrish Edwards had bobbled the ball. It looked like that was fourth down, game over. And if Jeff Press was able to dive and catch it, and
Yeah.
it's 21-19, and you're thinking Ansonia is going to tie this up. And it was just a classic game between two great teams. And that kind of built a rivalry a little bit. I felt that New London and Ansonia had one because of the 80s, but I think that made that rivalry even better because of that game.
Oh yeah, we were well aware of them. Way before that game because of the games that were they late '80s.
Yeah, Kevin Sharkey game.
We had,
Yeah.
yeah. So we were well aware what they were gonna have. You know, um, yeah, very, very, very good talent up there.
Yeah, definitely. And Pete, let me ask you, talk about Coach Hunt a little bit because I got to know him many years later and just a terrific guy. He was always very good to me, but a very demanding coach. I mean, he expected perfection out of you guys, and you would see it sometimes in the games. If somebody messed up, he would be in your face. I mean, tell me, what was it like playing for him? And I'm sure there were times you were like, oh, shoot, I messed up. Coach Hunt's going to get me.
I loved playing for Coach Hunt. because going back on when I said that, you know, he'd work us real hard conditioning the beginning of the year, but he didn't have us beat each other up all week. You
Yeah.
know, as long as we did what we were supposed to do, and he saw that we were, giving 100%, and he just wouldn't scream at you for no, he
Yeah.
just wouldn't take out aggression on you or anything like that. Of course, if the count's on 2, you go on 1, you're gonna get an earful,
Yeah.
which we expected. I love playing for Coach Hunt. I think the world of him. All the coaches that were there, Sponheimer and Earl Stanley.
Lacey. Yeah.
I don't. It's just they kept it simple, put in a few different plays, but they just let us do our thing, and they wouldn't get too upset. As far as like in practice, because some coaches are yellers. They're just
Yeah.
nonstop, and we didn't have that atmosphere. We just went to work, and sometimes they would see things in films on Sunday that could be scary. Like, you got to worry all week because you missed the block and it's going to get rebounded about 6-7 times.
Yeah.
And that's when you kind of got to worry. Film day, you made a
But
mistake.
But I always felt like with those coaches, Pete, is that they were just a little ahead of everybody else because you guys, even if like in practice, maybe you guys weren't running it right in the games, you guys always did what you had to do. I mean, and to this day, Ansonia still does that. I mean, they don't make many mistakes, and that's a credit to those coaches because anytime you watch the great Ansonia teams or you watch an Ansonia team that may have a down year, they do everything with perfection. The way they block, the way they tackle, run the ball, catch, everything. I mean, the coaching is just tremendous.
It is, and they put people in the right positions. They run it until you get it down, and they simplify it. There wasn't any offense that was just like going to cause confusion or cause turnovers. It was just more and they had faith in who they had. And that's just the way we rolled. And by the time game time, we'd have our play. We knew the plays because they've been the same plays.
Right.
You perform, and if you didn't, you look out Sunday because it's going to be a long night.
Right. So junior year, Pete, you're in the backfield. It's you and Ronnie Tate, and I mean, you have a sophomore quarterback now in Stephen Coughlin, but God, he didn't play like a sophomore quarterback. And that was another great Ansonia team that a lot of times I don't think gets credit because they didn't make the playoffs. But you talk about guys like Jamie Leahy, Lucian Perillo, Tim Lynch, I believe. I mean, so many just good players on that Ansonia team. And then, of course, the underclassmen who stepped up. And what a big year you had. And it really started for you in the Holy Cross game, and then it carried over into the Shelton game because you had 2 big games against Holy Cross and Shelton. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was able to find some holes those games, but the players you mentioned, I mean, tons of heart. Those guys just had a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Jamie Leahy, Tim Lynch, Lucian. Oh my gosh, and we ran into an excellent Naugatuck team. I mean, that team was serious. And with one loss, you were done.
Yeah, I mean, back then there was only 2 teams could make it, so there wasn't a lot of margin for error.
Yeah, I mean, we showed up to Nagy, and it was like we just got train wrecked, blindsided. They were on, and they were very, very good. I think, did they win the states that year?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they lost once to Seymour, but they did win the state title. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised. They were excellent. Their coaches put together my game plan. They did some things on defense that we weren't ready for.
Yeah.
Hats off to them. But I remember leaving that field like, wow, geez.
Yeah, and the thing is, Pete. Again, I thought those 2 years, Ansonia and Naugatuck had wonderful teams, but both those years, Ansonia and Naugatuck were just about even with each other, and it was a play there or a play here that made the difference. But let me ask you, the Derby game's another game. You had a big game. You scored the first touchdown in that game, and then you had like a 55-yard run the following offensive series. I mean, you really set the tone for what that afternoon would be, which would be you guys winning the game 41-8. Talk about that game a little bit.
Well, I think some of the teams, they tend to worry about, or probably all of them, worry about Ronald a lot. So sometimes the coaches, they could spot the middles open. And,
yeah,
I remember playing Torrington. They kind of did the same thing. We're at a big game. And, Derby, where they kind of spread out. They want to stop around the end.
right.
And, we had a very good line to push forward. And there were some nice holes that day, just hats off to the linemen. Roy Alberti, Ben Lindsay, David Blackwell, Joe Jakowski. Those guys are very good.
Yeah, and the thing too, Pete, that about the Derby Ansonia game back then as well is this is what I think is definitely a lot different now. Is it's not a rivalry like it once was, and I don't even think like they only hated each other on game day, obviously, but the dislike for each other isn't there like it was when you guys played. Because when you played Derby, I mean, it. There were times you couldn't always walk like into Derby without kind of getting, a little razzed and stuff like that. Talk about that a little bit, because I feel like that rivalry is just not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that back then. I remember might have been one of my first jobs working at Caldor, and there's a few Derby players working there, and they actually would schedule us on different shifts. Just because there was that.
Yeah.
Not you, but there was that tension. There was always super competitive. Both sides. It didn't matter which sport. Baseball, we'd play them in Babe Ruth. They had the Orioles. They had a few other teams, and they were very good. Their Pop Warner, like we played them, they were very good. So there was that, that rivalry, that competitiveness, and sometimes it would get taken a little bit far, but
yeah. But I mean, it was a great.
As far as now, I go down to the valley, quite a bit, but my previous career working in corrections and all the overtime, I kind of lost track of some stuff, how it is.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a size issue, that kind of hurt that rivalry. I would say, even like towards the end of my years, you could see Derby had a little lack of size.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't have the linemen, you're not gonna be doing too much.
Right, but I feel like a Derby kid and an Ansonia kid went into that week like there was nerves, obviously, but there was so much excitement because back then you just felt so privileged to be able to be a part of it and play in that game. I mean, it really was to me the best rivalry in the state of Connecticut, and maybe I'm biased because I grew up in Derby.
Oh, you're 100% correct. 100%. There's a lot of families that they have relatives like myself in Derby. Yeah. So of course you want to have a big day. And that was like that for a lot of us. Some parents grew up in Derby, moved to Ansonia, vice versa. And that day everybody was coming out.
Right.
So you want to, you want to do your best and put on a good show.
Right.
So a lot of excitement. The pep rallies are amazing. That really set the tone. We'd have those pep rallies during the day, and man, you're ready to go after those.
Right. Absolutely. And Pete, after the Naugatuck game, what I really felt about the incoming players for the 94 season is I compare it, but I really shouldn't because the records were different. But when Derby had that first losing season in 91 and they went 5-6, it was the first one in 28 years. Those players were very animated. They did not like the fact that they were part of a team that had the first losing season. And for you guys, losing that one game to Naugatuck felt like a losing season for you guys because you guys were very irritated and very bothered by that. And you kind of came into the off season with, we're not fooling around here. We are going to win the state championship. If we don't, then we failed as high school athletes. Was that the mindset you guys had going into that year?
Yeah, I mean that that bus ride back to Ansonia, you could hear a pin drop. I think a lot of us, I know myself, we felt terrible for the seniors that they had to go out like that. We weren't happy with the way we played. Not to take nothing away from Naugatuck because that team was awesome, but we had some turnovers, and I think we had, we're a little bit younger at certain skill positions,
Yeah.
and some mistakes, turnovers they'll kill you. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't have that feeling, and we felt real bad when we got back to the Nolan Field, and the players, the seniors had to take their equipment off for the last time, with a loss. So we just want to make sure that wouldn't happen again.
Right. And Pete, when the season started, if I remember correctly, you missed the first 4 games of the year with an injury, correct?
Yeah, was it 3 or 4? I forget, but you might be right with 4. I might have been 3. I'm not sure. Yeah, I tore ligaments in my ankle in scrimmage,
Yeah.
and I tried to keep coming back a little early, and I would aggravate it. I ended up, going to therapy and leave Waterbury, and I still lifted weights, but that was very difficult time, you know, trying to get better to get back on the field.
And how bothered were you by that? Because I know for number one, you're a senior, and number two, you love playing the game. How bothered was it for you to have to stand on the sidelines and not be able to be out there?
Oh, it was terrible, and that's why I kept trying to come back too early. So I'd come back and practice, could feel okay, and then I would hit, and I'd get the pain. I have to limp off and go back in ice, and it's just yeah, not fun at all. I'm just thankful that I was able to stay injury free and get back when I could, to help the team out.
And that's what I talk about, how everybody on that team that year contributed. Because while you were out, Jay Jabina and Jeff Gregorio did a good job. They kind of rotated in at fullback because, let's face it, you and Ron Tate were 2 of the best 1-2 punch in Connecticut, and
Oh, thank you.
you guys lose half of that, and then Jeff and Jay did a real good job kind of filling in to give Ron some breaks from carrying the ball. So I really thought they did a great job in your absence.
Oh, they did an excellent job. They were big, strong kids that could run, and they definitely did a good job filling in. And Jeff went on to play that position of his senior year, and he was an excellent player.
Yeah, and
so was
another,
Jason.
and Jeff and Jay Lightham. It's pretty interesting because they went to Derby up until, like, I believe 8th grade, and then Jeff leaves Derby and goes to Ansonia High School. So I mean, you always wonder about things. What would have happened if the Lighthams and Gregorios would have stayed, and it just wasn't meant to be.
It would have been a huge help, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean,
No
that's
doubt
just
about it.
yeah, and you always wonder about that. But Pete, let me ask you, that you come back, and I think the game you came back, you might have scored 2 touchdowns. So I mean, you came back and you were right in sync. And then the Derby game, I mean, you may not have had a touchdown in that Derby game, but you had it close to 100 yards. I mean, you had some tremendous runs in that Derby game, and that's got to be a good feeling, senior year against Derby, in Derby, having a great game like that.
Yeah, I felt great that day, and Joe Jakowski was laying down some serious blocks. Dave Blackwell, Roy, Vinny, like they were just moving people. And I'm not sure if their defense was a little spread out, but there were some nice holes there. It was awesome. There was a nice, large crowd too. Very large crowd that day. It was a beautiful day. Your traditional Ansonia Derby in the morning, little dew on the grass. I mean, can't beat it.
Yeah, and the thing is, Pete, that game was hardly ever a blowout. And in your junior and senior seasons, you beat them 41-8 and 50-6. So I mean, against a rivalry like that, your crosstown rival, I mean, to beat them like you did, I mean, again, it goes without saying the talent you had, but it had to be just a tremendous feeling as a player.
Yeah, it was. It was to be able to go out and do that to your neighboring town, and a town that you grew up watching the games, and now it's your shot, and you're able to do something like that. But Derby had a lot of heart. They have a lot of, they still do, but like Joey Cabral and Chris Ruther.
Jamal
Those
Baskins,
kids, yeah, Jamal Baskins. There was no quit in them, and I give them a ton of credit.
Yeah.
Because they were hitting all game. And they never left the field. They never left the field. Just a lot of it comes down to size. We just had that big. We had that big line.
Right.
We had a good mixture.
And Pete, I think the big reason, again, I mean, obviously talent, but the big reason why you guys were so successful that year is because even when you were blowing teams out, it was the little things sometimes the coaches would see and they would nitpick, but I think that was crucial because it only made you guys better football players. I remember after the Derby game, although you guys won 50-6, Coach Hunt was not happy with the going off sides and the holding penalties and stuff like that. So, I mean, when you have a coach critiquing you, even when you win 50-6, it just goes to show that those coaches are always going to keep you sharp and they're going to make sure that whatever mistakes you are making, they're going to be corrected.
100% right. I mean, there's nothing that they put in that is too difficult. Was too difficult. So, if you jumped off sides or, you had a mental lapse, I mean, you're going to hear it, because, it hurts the team. So, yeah, there's expectations for sure.
Yeah. And Pete, I always wanted to ask this. I mean, it's always, I'll watch some of the old games sometimes, so I'll notice it more. You had number 39 for many years. What made you decide to go with number 6 senior year?
I just felt like I worked hard on my speed, and I just felt like 6 was a little more than the traditional. I used to look at Larry Zonka a lot and read about him and stuff like that. So I like that number. Then college, maybe was it Tyrone Wheatley or Jerome Bettis? One of them wore 6, and I believe maybe Tyrone Wheatley. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to be considered a little more than just your average, run up the middle block type guy, and just new life. 39, that number, we lost it with that number. So let's try something new. Let's say,
Right.
So that's pretty much what it came down to,
Right. And Pete, talk about the Thanksgiving game. We've touched on it briefly, but what a game. And I was just kind of watching a little of it today before I had you on. And it was back and forth. Early on, Naugatuck was up 13-7. It looked like they were dominating the game. Then you guys get a big touchdown to start the third quarter. Then you guys go ahead. You're up 21-13. Then late in the game, Naugatuck, I think Joey Edmonds scores a big touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion, and we're going overtime. And it kind of looks like the momentum is Naughty, but you guys kept it together. But just talk about playing in a great game like that, and then, of course, the thrill of winning a game like that.
Yeah, that game was awesome. I mean, it was unbelievable. Just from the start, coming out in the morning, it was the perfect Thanksgiving day, weather-wise, a little crisp in the morning. And we'd run through. The cheerleaders they had the banner set up, and man, I just couldn't believe the amount of people that were there. It was electric just from the kickoff, and they were an awesome team. They really were. I mean, they were right there with us. But as far as atmosphere goes, you can't beat that with that many amount of people.
Yeah.
No, it was mobbed everywhere.
And what a way to win it, Pete. I mean, in overtime, Jay Jabina gets that big sack at the end. I mean, what a way to just win, and the crowd's all running on the field. I mean, that just was, for a kid, a 17-year-old kid like yourself, that had to just be unbelievable.
Oh gosh, yeah. We never lost confidence. When we had that Texas tiebreaker, we just felt like we were going to score. We all, just like the rest of the year, we just feel like we could score, we could hold them, and fortunately, we were able to make some plays and get the win. But hats off to that Naugatuck team, man. They were good. They were real good. Joey Edmonds, he caused a lot of problems back there, quarterback.
Yeah.
He had Paul Francis that was flying down the field, and Marlon Fernandez.
Yeah, that was Ron Tate's cousin, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, they had a big line. They had that fullback, number 22. He was good, real good. Conklin.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was very, very good player.
Yeah, great coaches too at Naugatuck. Yeah, Coach Peters is one of the best.
And it's a shame that they didn't get a shot to play Cheshire that year.
Yeah,
You
and
know, because they had one loss, and Cheshire was on that run with the McIntosh brothers,
yeah,
and it would have been a good. It would have been nice to see, how that game would have unfolded, to see where we were at, because we know we were right there with us.
yeah.
Um,
And it's
we
funny
tried
you
to play
bring.
Cheshire.
Yeah, it's
We wanted to
funny
play
you
him at
bring
Yale
up.
Bowl.
Yeah,
We wanted to play him at Yale Bowl, but they just couldn't get it done. I don't think it was on our end, but
yeah.
they probably had more to lose than us.
Right. And people would always talk about that, Cheshire and Ansonia. And the funny thing is, I can remember when I was with Derby and Cheshire, they beat us pretty bad. And I remember it was getting towards the end of the game, and you heard one of their linemen go, "We want Ansonia." And it was just funny to think that a school that's never probably heard of, or I'm sure they've heard of Ansonia, but they're playing their own division. They don't ever play Ansonia. To hear them say Ansonia, you could tell that that's how big both schools were, and they wanted those two to play.
Yeah, and the feeling was mutual for sure. I know Coach Hunt wanted to make that happen. It would have been great. It would have been great to see. But they had talent too. Very good.
Oh yeah, and I mean those three teams that year, Ansonia, Cheshire, and Naugatuck. I mean, they were three of the best teams in the state. They really were. I mean, you could put those three up against anybody. And you talk about players from that year. I mean, even the kid from Crosby, Ortiz. I mean,
Oh man, he was
yeah,
good.
yeah, he was tremendous. And I mean, Ansonia didn't get to play Crosby that year because of how the schedules went, which was unfortunate because it would have been nice to see, the battle of Ortiz and Tate and Reynolds and all that stuff. It would have just been so much fun.
Yeah, when did we see them? I remember playing against him. Um, I remember him chasing down Jason Tinney, which was
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
Nobody was catching him when he had that much of a distance. Man, you watch that film, it's like he came out like he was shot out of a cannon.
yeah. He was very good.
And same thing on when he played linebacker. And we were able to, do a good job when he was at running back. But when he was at linebacker, man, if he got a hold of you, you're getting slammed. You're getting slammed down.
Yeah, and I
You're
think
super
about
strong.
this too, Pete, because you guys played in the MVL. It'd be like if somebody played in the Hoosie. You want to see somebody from your division, get recognition or win the big thing. And Ortiz was player of the state that year for the Register. So even though like they're a rivalry for you, they're in your division. It had to be pretty cool for you guys to see that somebody in your league was player of the state.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you could see it in his play. I mean, the way he covered the field on defense. It's like, man, you don't want to run near that guy, because he's gonna pick you up. He just was that strong and that fast.
Yeah.
Just
And
really,
Pete,
really awesome talent.
right. And Pete, the Bloomfield game to me was like almost nothing against Bloomfield, and they would have some great teams going forward, but it was almost like anticlimactic the way I felt because I really felt the state championship was won that day when you guys beat Naugatuck because you guys that was such an emotional victory that there was no way you were going to lose this state championship game. And you guys, I think, had a 40-0 lead at halftime. And I mean, there was just no doubt. So let me ask you, it was great to win that state title. But, like, I mean, did the feeling of when the final tick on the clock left, I mean, did you have that feeling we're state champions, or was it a little of a letdown because of the Naugatuck game?
Well, when you're saying when we beat Bloomfield,
Yeah.
no, we
Yeah.
were thrilled. We were thrilled to death. Oh my gosh, we
Yeah.
were so excited that we were able to go out there and do that. We were thrilled at halftime. That's kind of when when you're 40-0 at
Celebration.
halftime.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great way to end a pretty good season. If anything, just like wow, reality, like this is it. But a lot of hugging, a lot of cheers and high fives. A lot of
Yeah.
celebration for
And the
sure.
thing is, too, Pete, is you guys had played together since you were little kids. You guys went to school together. So this is like something you win with your friends, something that you'll have forever. So that's really what winning the state championship is the best part about it, is you did it with your friends.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the cool thing. You always have that. You always have that memory. And I go down and I see my friends. Now that I'm out of my old job, I have more time. I'm down the valley quite a bit, and we talk about it. I go over Joe Jakowski's house, and Dave Blackwell will come over. Mike Mahalsick will come over, another great player.
Yeah,
and,
he was. Yep.
Yeah, and excellent baseball player too.
Oh yeah.
We get the guys together and maybe go down Dewdrop or get some Bad Suns, and it's just it's an awesome thing to be able to have that to reflect on. Talk about the good times and that year, kind of negate Noggy Junior year a little bit.
Yeah. And the thing was too, Pete, like I said, you guys were so irritated from that game, and you came into the season very animated. And like I said, I know Ron Tate was very big on anything short of a state championship this year is a disappointment. So it's like everything that you guys set out to do and accomplish, you were able to do. And I mean, that's a credit to the hard work, because guess what? I mean, football is a grind, and it gets tougher and tougher, and it's not easy to win week in and week out. And you guys were able to do that and have an 11-0 season. It had to be special.
Yeah, I mean, great teams don't think they're going to lose, and we never thought that. Every year was the goals is win the NBL, go to the state championship, win the state championship, and you gotta set that bar to get, you gotta be able to believe it to achieve it, type of thing. So we always believe, no matter which year it was, that we could do it. It's
right.
just.
And Pete, what would you say? Obviously, the state championship and stuff, but you personally, what was the most rewarding thing that football did for you?
Just being part of that type of a team, being around guys like that, further on in life, I maybe always want to belong to a team, whether it's, coworkers or, coaching, because it's such a great feeling to be surrounded by coaches and, players like that. It's like, I always continued to crave it. And I couldn't imagine not having anything, like as far as not coaching or just having a good group around you, even at work or out. Sorry, buddy. That fell. All right, there you go. You still see me?
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. So I think being a part of a team is one of the most important things I carry.
Right. Definitely.
Being a good team, no matter if it's in sports or not in sports.
Right. Well, Pete, I really appreciate you coming on today, giving me a little time. It was awesome. Like I said, you're one of the best fullbacks I ever saw play, and I really do applaud. I really do applaud you and your teammates for what you did that season, for what you did in your Ansonia football careers. I've always said from 92 to 96, I saw so many great Ansonia football players, and you don't have to take a back seat to anybody in high school football. You guys were the cream of the crop, and you as a player were tremendous, and I really do appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you inviting me. It's like I said, it's always great to talk Valley football. So
well, I
had a very good time.
Well, thank you again, and I really do appreciate it. And there you have it. Yep, thank you, Pete. And there you have it, folks. You just spent an hour with Pete Reynolds. When I was in high school, some of the best players I ever saw came out of Ansonia. And Pete Reynolds was one of those players, one of the toughest kids you'll ever see. I mean, that kid hit you, you knew you were hit. And he was very underrated as a running back, because as great as Ron Tate was, you always need that complimentary back with you. And that's what Pete and Ron did for each other. They were two of the best in the state. And years later, you just see the type of person Pete is, and he's always been appreciative about what football did for him, what the coaches did for him, and the town that he loved and grew up in and got to play for. That stands out to me more than anything else. Looking back on his career, Pete Reynolds can always be proud. He was an MVL champion, a state champion, a great football player, and he's an even better person. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone.